Early days.
And it is time to podcast. Welcome to Survivor Buffs, hosted by Adam and Gideon. Our special guest today is Peridiam. Gideon, what are we talking about today?
All right, today we are talking about and casting the Survivor Mount Rushmore. So basically, we've all kind of built off of different criteria, but I'll go with saying how I casted mine. I tried to compare mine to the presidents that are on Mount Rushmore. That's Washington, Jefferson, Roosevelt, Lincoln. I remembered. Let's go. So yeah, that's what I did mine off of. What did you do yours off of, Adam?
So I tried to do, because the thing about Mount Rushmore is, you know, it's four faces, but it's something different to everyone. Some people, I feel like the most common thing is just to do the four best, or you consider the four best in whatever field you're categorizing. You could do four most iconic. I tried to do a little thing a little bit different so that we all didn't have the same lists, even though there are, of course, almost 600 people to choose from here. What I did for my list is I made sure to pick two male and two female contestants. And what I tried to do is for both male and female, pick the GOAT and pick the BOAT. So the greatest of all time, the best of all time, greatest meaning who over the course of their Survivor career, obviously favoring players who have returned here, have sort of accomplished the most. At least one win, I think, was the criteria for me for that. Best is a lot more subjective. Who do I consider to be just the most all-around talented Survivor players? So I'm hoping that'll give my list a little bit more of a difference or a variety of what we're all doing. But Peridiam, what did you base your list off of today?
So it's a funny thing. I actually put together a couple of lists. I do ultimately have a solidified four that I'm willing to, but I spent way too much time thinking over this. I think it's ultimately, I think, going to come down to a little bit of mixture of just iconic status in Survivor lore and just how good of a player these people were. It's a little bit of both, maybe. But I did put together like a historically accurate Survivor Mount Rushmore if we were to try and relate it to the actual one for like the same reasons, because I have sort of touched on this in a video of mine like a year and a half ago, where I tried to look at the top 5 most iconic survivors, and I was inspired by the idea of having a Mount Rushmore, but I didn't do a Mount Rushmore because I did 5 of them. I did do this for Big Brother last summer, where I picked the 4 that I think best represented like the inspiration for the actual stuff that's carved in South Dakota. So yeah, I got 4. I think I'm going to be more in line with what the fans are picking, so I don't piss them all off. But I would probably agree with the general sentiment that I asked on Twitter yesterday. I said, who would you guys pick? And there was an overwhelming response to generally gravitating to 4 people. So
Okay, interesting. Your the list you made of the 5 iconic players, was it just 5 names like this sort of is, or was it like a ranked?
It was just 5 names. It wasn't ranked or anything like that. It was
Okay.
I don't even know. It might have been in chronological order from when they appeared, but there wasn't any rhyme or reason to when I presented them.
Gotcha. What season had aired?
That was actually after the premiere episode of Island of the Idols.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So do you think
it was before like Tony came back and won? At that point, we had only seen Tony. Like, Tony's obviously a really hot topic to talk about when you want to talk about putting his face on a mountain in Fiji or giving him a face statue. But this was obviously I made the video. That's the thing with making these videos and this content, is that sometimes some topics are evergreen, and then other times the next season it's like totally invalidated. And everyone's like, where's Tony? Where's Tony? I'm like, Tony didn't win the second time yet. Hold on, like, chill.
Yeah, for sure. So rolling off of that, I think if I had to guess one player that I feel like is going to be on everyone's list, it's probably going to be Tony. Could be wrong here. I'd be shocked, but I'll just go ahead and say my first person to get him out of the way. It's got to be Tony. Tony Vlachos, 2-time winner, obviously. Spoilers if you haven't seen season 40 or 28 for that matter. But I feel like the field of my criteria that I put Tony on was the GOAT person for male players, obviously. Obviously, no male has won twice, but not only did Tony win twice, both of his wins were in such dominant fashion, in my opinion. In Cagayan, like he obviously didn't win like any. I don't think he won any challenges in Cagayan, if I'm not mistaken. But
Except for
An
awards.
individual.
Yeah.
Individual.
yeah. So just from day one, it just seemed like he was playing on such a different level from everyone else, which is so amazing when you compare or when you look at the field that was there for Cagayan with players like Spencer, and I think Tasha goes a little bit underrated. Cass, I know she kind of got the edit of just being this villain who was just causing chaos and just sort of wanted to see the world burn as opposed to actually winning. But I think she actually played a really solid game in Cagayan. Obviously, Lucina would later become to be one of the greatest, not just female winners, I think one of the greatest winners, period. So that's just looking at Cagayan. When you look at the fact he came back for Winners at War in all winners season, never had one vote against him, never had to deal with Edge of Extinction. I feel like it's no question that Tony is the single most accomplished player of the 590 I think it's been. So Tony's my first face. But Gideon, do you want to give us your first name? You got Tony on your list too?
Oh yeah, of course. I put Tony as my George Washington. I want to see that big bald head sticking out at the biggest, out of Mount Rushmore. George Washington, he was a very crafty guy. Beat the British as a war general using unorthodox methods. Tony's a bit of an unorthodox guy, and also when people, usually when people think of Mount Rushmore, they usually think of George Washington first. So I would rather people think of Tony first as well. So that's why I have Tony as my George Washington biggest head, and yeah, he's the GOAT.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Anybody that disagrees, bring it on. So, nah.
Do you have Tony on your list as well, or did you?
I'm gonna go in order of who I put them on. I guess possibly.
Okay.
I'll explain later. But
Okay.
I did put a list of who I would put on, and I don't know if I would. Tony very much could be the George Washington. George has the biggest head, I think, of the four of them on the mountain, and it makes sense. If you're going to put, like, the dude won against all the other winners, like, I think a criteria from you is that you probably have to have won the game to be considered for the Mount Rushmore of the show. It would be hard not to. It's like you don't give a Mount Rushmore to the loser of the election, It doesn't make sense. You don't give it to the guy who lost to George Washington for whatever reason. So... yeah, 4 winners. I decided to go with some very stock pick that I think everyone's expecting. I put Boston Rob first. Again, he got Island of the Idols. He's got a giant face statue, literally in Fiji. I don't know what they did with it. Maybe it's still there. Who knows? Maybe they're saving it for the next time they bring him back. Maybe they carve the top off and turn it into like a tribal council or something. So yeah, I put Rob on there. He's played 5 times. He's been on the show 6 seasons. Varying degrees of success. But I do think when you think of like iconic players, and obviously he won with fair play. Like I think you got to have Boston Rob at top of mind. I think the average fan of Survivor will think of Boston Rob, maybe even ahead of Tony. I think super fans will think of Tony, but I think the average person who watches Survivor, of the however many is it tuning in 5, 6, 7 million every week, and even going back, people who have dropped off the show, they're not going to think of Tony as much. And so I'm like, you look at modern Mount Rushmore, you take the presidents, you're not going to probably have too many of the most recent presidents on there. You're going to get people from a long time ago, from 100. So anyway, I stuck Boston Rob as my first pick. We may get to Tony, though. But yeah.
Cool.
I'm surprised nobody went Hatch.
Well, so that's partially like where I'm going with my list ranking. We'll see. I haven't made up my mind on my final 4 just yet.
I'm just surprised because he's the founding father. I'm surprised nobody went there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll
Boston
see.
Rob's number 1.
So I'll go with my second pick. I guess I'll switch it over. Like I said, I picked 2 men and 2 female players. For the female player that I consider to be the greatest or the most accomplished, who has the we talk so much about your Survivor resume. Usually people are referring to just that season that you're on at the time. But if we're talking about who has the greatest sort of Survivor resume over the course of their career, I feel like a lot of people would pick Sandra because she's won 2 times. I'm actually going to go a different route here personally and pick Parvati. So Parvati's my second pick. Obviously, she's only won once, whereas Sandra's won twice. But I feel like a big part of why Sandra won Heroes versus Villains, if not the only part, is just because of how bitter the jury is. And I'm not saying Sandra didn't deserve to win or that she was a bad winner. I think Sandra is a fine player. But I just feel like Parvati has more moves under her belt. Obviously, she blows Sandra out of the water when it comes to accomplishments for challenge games. I think Parvati's an underrated challenge competitor. She's won a good number over her career, especially towards the beginning. I don't think she did that well in Winners at War, but she held her own for a while, and she obviously won Micronesia, which was a pretty tough season to win. There was a lot of strong players. Spoiler alert, that's not the only Micronesia player on my Mount Rushmore. I'll save the other for later. But Parvati's going to be my pick. I think she just has the most. She has more wins. She has more big moves. I think she might have more big moves than any female contestant ever, and probably still holds the distinction for the single greatest move in history. Of course, being the double idol play in Heroes and Villains, but Parvati's going to be my second pick. So it's Tony and Parv for me right now.
So you don't have 4 winners. You have a non-winner on your top 4. Ooh, interesting.
Yes.
Right. So do I.
Yes, I do.
Oh, there we go. All right.
Okay. So for my Thomas Jefferson, the second person lined up on Mount Rushmore. So my thought process. I just want to break this down as why I went this player. Thomas Jefferson spearheaded the Louisiana Purchase, which doubled the size of the U.S. So I wanted to think, what made Survivor bigger? Who made Survivor bigger, and who made the biggest impact of making it bigger? I also, my mind went to. He also wrote the Declaration of Independence. So, founding strategy. One of the founding strategists. So I went Boston Rob. I think Boston Rob made Survivor what it is today. Obviously, one of the biggest players of all time. Really, especially with All Stars, his performance there. That's how a lot of people got into Survivor. Might have doubled, tripled, whatever the fan base right there. So I went Boston Rob, great player. I'm a big Boston Rob fan. Some people hate that, but I don't care. So I went Boston Rob.
Yeah, you gotta stick your neck out,
Yeah, exactly.
Boston Rob's great. He was my first pick, obviously. It's funny you're comparing it to the presidents. I did my historically accurate version, and I actually have my number 2 comparing them to Jefferson. And my number 2, I picked Sandra. Again, we're going along. We got Boston Rob, we got Sandra. These are the 2 stock picks for me. They literally have the craziest thing with this. I can't get over the face statues in Fiji with Island of the Idols. It's just literally, it's like Mount Rushmore. It would be sacrilege, in my opinion, not to pick those 2 for nothing else. But obviously, Sandra is an accomplished player. She won the first 2 times. Nobody else has ever done that in the history of the show. It's feeling like that will now never happen now that we have seen a lot of one-time winners come back and lose. Tony has already deleted that ability for that to happen for most of them, like half of them. So Sandra's really solidified her ability to be regarded as in the top 4 pantheon. And I compared it to Jefferson. Again, you said the Declaration of Independence. I said Sandra is all about independence. She is not tied to anyone. She will flip on anyone. Obviously, the United States flip, that's more of a Washington trait, I feel like, with the revolution. But Sandra, she'll go with whatever works. So she's like an independent agent in any game. She will go anywhere as long as it's not her. Again, Jefferson bought the Louisiana Purchase. It doubled the size of the United States. Sandra, she won twice. She doubled the size of her bank account. I feel like that's pretty legitimate. And Jefferson's main trait, the main reason he was put on Mount Rushmore, was about the growth of the nation. Sandra's all about the growth of, the size of her crown. So I felt like it fit. If anyone was going to be shoehorned into Jefferson's role, give me Sandra Diaz-Twine. So I
Very
put
cool.
her. Yeah.
It's
I will say-
interesting how me and you are finding different ways to compare him to the presidents.
You can stretch
you're-
it anyway.
Yeah,
I will say I put Boston Rob as Roosevelt, and I said that. So here's the funny thing about Boston Rob, timeline wise. I looked at the history of the U.S. Right, history 1776 to 2021.
Yeah.
And if you compare to the amount of time that the U.S. has existed to 40 seasons of Survivor, I
Yeah.
tried to figure out how many years is a season of Survivor worth, and it turns out that Mount Rushmore was made in 1926. If you did that in the Survivor timeline, you're looking at around the time of One World is when this Mount Rushmore would have been created, hypothetically. So I felt like, all right, maybe I can't include anyone who hasn't appeared after One World. And it just so happens Roosevelt was around the exact same time as Rob won, which was 22. Roosevelt was in 1909, I believe. So right around 1926, a few years before that. Yeah, Roosevelt was known as the trust buster. He cared about the working man. He was all about the development of the game. And so it felt like, you know what, that makes sense. Give me Boston Rob. If anyone has showed up in like every era of Survivor, it's Boston Rob. He's been around from like old school to new school. Didn't translate as well in new school, but he's still around for it. He got to see it play out, unfortunately, against him. So yeah, give me Boston Rob was my Roosevelt. Sandra was my Jefferson.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So since we're kind of at the halfway point, just to recap if anyone's trying to keep track, I so far have done Tony and Parvati. Gideon, you did Tony and Rob, right? And then Peridiam has done Rob and Sandra. So that's our halftime recap. So I guess I'll go on to my third person.
I'm really curious to know who you guys have as non-winners.
Yeah.
I think I might know who you got, but I'm curious.
I hope you don't hate. Oh, no, Adam's gonna surprise you, dog. Like,
Will Adam surprise me? Oh, damn. Okay. Yeah, 'cause I don't.
Adam's gonna shock you because when he told me, I was like, "You're crazy. You're nuts.
All
We're
right,
gonna get in a fight."
Maybe I'll be less surprised by yours, Gideon. I was expecting.
You'll be less
to be less
surprised
surprised by Adam's, but maybe I'll be more surprised now.
No.
Yeah. Well, another
said
thing
it-
too is like when you look at Mount Rushmore itself, like I was trying to think like if someone from a different country was studying all of American history and had no idea who was on Mount Rushmore and or even knew what Mount Rushmore was, if they studied American history from Washington all the way up until today, and after that you said guess who would be on, guess who literally is Mount Rushmore. I can't imagine that many people would probably put together Jefferson, Washington, Roosevelt, and Lincoln. Not that I don't think any of those presidents
What
don't
would they
deserve
back in
to be-
1926?
Right. Yeah. So it's I wanted mine to be a little bit like like I kind of wanted that reaction for my list.
You
and
got
also
it.
to just
You got it. You're gonna get it. Yeah.
So like I said, I kind of try to do the greatest and the best for both male and female. So I just gave you my two greatest, being Tony for male, Parvati for female. If I had to pick who I think is just the best Survivor female, there was a couple in the running. Parvati would be in the running, but she obviously was my pick for greatest. People like Lucina, I think her improvement. I don't know if any female contestant has improved from their first game to their second game quite as much as she has on Game Changers, and I think even improved again for Winners at War. Obviously, she came in fourth in Winners at War and won Game Changers, but I still saw a lot of improvement in her game, and obviously her competition improved as well. So there's a lot of people to choose from here. It wasn't that tough for me to pick since I already chose Parvati. I actually went with Sari Fields for the best for the best female player. I know a lot of times people associate, and I don't blame them, associate best with kind of having that win as a requirement, but I think a lot of times people will tend to underestimate just how much luck plays into the game of Survivor. I know we don't like to think that because we kind of, as purists, want Survivor to feel like it's just 100% from top to back, all strategy, all the show. But no matter what, you're going to have like the inevitable bad luck, which you will for any competition. I mean, like with football, like obviously injuries are just something that are, as much as you train, it's just sometimes impossible to avoid. So Suri, I think, obviously falls on the spectrum as good luck and bad luck. I think falls way towards the bad luck side of things. Obviously, with Micronesia being a final two, which hadn't happened since Palau or Guatemala, maybe it had been
Exile Island.
yeah,
It's been
since her first season, yeah. So had it been a final three, I'm fairly confident Suri would have won, possibly even won with flying colors. And then obviously in Game Changers, you had the first ever, I believe it was the first ever vote where everyone was safe except for Suri. So she was able to get to the end in kind of an old school season like Panama. I feel like you could split Survivor into new school and old school. But if we did have that kind of middle school era, I think that started with Micronesia, and she was able to make it all the way to the end, basically, in Micronesia. And then in Game Changers, too, which was such a different game at that point from her first 2 or 3 seasons, if we're counting Heroes and Villains, was still able to make it so far and navigate through this new world of advantages and idols and just that, every player being like a super fan playing at 100 the whole time. I pick Suri for the best all around female player. Love to see her back. Every time she plays, I think she has a chance of winning, and I can't say that for that many people. So Suri's my favorite.
Was Suri the pick that you thought I would disagree with?
No.
Oh no, okay. Because I was gonna say I don't strongly disagree with that pick. I will say personally, I don't have Suri on my Mount Rushmore. And I think I thought about that. I think she's like, if anyone was to be 5th or 6th, she is like the tier 2. And I hate putting Suri in a tier 2 because it is like a razor thin margin. If it's a final 3, like you said on Micronesia, I think Suri is absolutely an insta lock for this. And like, that's crazy how much of a difference it is that Parvati gets to be on the Mount Rushmore. And I think it's unanimous. Like on Twitter, everyone was saying Parvati, and I'm like, it's just so funny because Suri is definitely on there. But if it was a final 3 and it wasn't a final 2, I think Suri is regarded as one of the best, maybe the best female player of all time. Because she never wins, she's usually regarded as one of the best, certainly the best to never win, maybe the best to never win. It's just the difference is so razor thin that I just felt bad. I'm like, I can't believe it. Suri, if you put her on, I 100% have no problem with it. I think it's a good pick.
I think another thing too, when you're go ahead, Gideon.
It's a good pick. I mean, Suri is a great all around player. Definitely one of the best, if not the best, social strategists in the entire game. She's so dang likable. I mean, and I mean, in Micronesia, how she manipulated people was astounding to watch. So I understand how you're calling her the boat. Is that what you called it? Best of all time, the boat. I can see that. If you're going that route with your Mount Rushmore, I understand.
I think she's one of the players, you put her on 100 seasons and she might do the best average overall of almost anyone in the 590 something people that have played Survivor.
Yeah, and I think too, her Micronesia game is heralded as a great game already, and I actually just went back and rewatched it. And I think it's even you can even consider it an underrated game. I know Parvati winning, I think a lot of people associate some of the big Micronesia moments with Parvati, and not that she didn't play a large part in them, but I think a lot of the biggest moments throughout Micronesia kind of started with an idea that sparked in Suri's head. Like the Aussie blindside was Suri's idea. The Eric idol trick was Suri's idea. There's a couple more I can go down, but I don't want to stick to Suri too much. But she's my pick. And My one last defense for Suri, although it seems like you guys aren't disagreeing too much.
Keep
I'm not gonna
defending.
fight. I'm not gonna fight.
My,
I'm
my
not gonna
last
fight.
my last defense for anyone out there that doesn't agree. One, you're wrong. Two is I know when you look at seasons like Heroes and Villains, some people might look at those seasons as kind of like a red X on your resume or something that like brings you down in the points. I kind of look at it the other way. I think that you can almost
because
add
she was
that.
voted out early. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Because she was voted, okay.
Yeah, I almost kind of look at those as I don't want to say those are accomplishments because they're not accomplishments, but I wouldn't put those as a negative thing on your resume. Like Tony in Game Changers. Like I feel like those moments are only markdowns if you weren't able to redeem yourself in some way. Because I don't know if Tony wins if he doesn't, have that game
Exactly.
change.
Yeah.
So I know this has become a Suri discussion, so I'll let Gideon say his next pick. But Suri is my third face.
All right, Roosevelt. All right, Teddy Roosevelt, a great conservationalist of America. All right, so
Teddy what?
when I was thinking of who do I think is a conservationalist who doesn't really spread themselves out in the game much, I thought Sandra Diaz-Twine, because she doesn't really rely on anything other than her social strategy. So when I thought, conservationalist, I went Sandra. Obviously, Sandra's a 2-time winner. So I don't really know what else to say. I mean, she's a great player. I'm not really that big of a Sandra fan, so I surprised myself thinking. But when I thought conservationalist, it really doesn't get more conservative than anybody but me. It can vote off anybody as long as it's not me. I'm fine with it. So yeah, I went with Sandra because she's the ultimate conservative of Survivor, in my opinion.
Do you think Gideon was someone like Sandra? Would you? Because obviously, like she won her first season against a pretty talented field.
Well, yeah.
Won her second season against arguably the most talented field we've ever seen. When it came for seasons like Game Changers and Winners at War, do you, for someone, I know I kind of just mentioned this point with Suri, but do you see those seasons as ways to mark her down, or is it like when she's hit that peak?
Those are markdowns. All right. Those are markdowns, and that's why I am not putting her as the Washington or Jefferson because those seasons are markdowns. Game Changers. She got outplayed. They threw a challenge. I was watching your video, Peridiam, and they threw a challenge and got her out.
Did you know that beforehand? Did you know that, Benny? You didn't know? Yeah, right. It's a very little known fact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, they threw a challenge, got her out. She was outplayed then. What was worse, in my opinion, was the Winners at War outing, just because she was not conservative at all there. Giving up an idol is the worst thing you can do. I don't even like people telling that there's an idol, telling others that there's an idol. So her giving the idol.
One round though. It was only good for one more tribal.
I don't care. I would have used it on myself. That was that. If you can guarantee yourself one more spot, that's the way she's been playing this whole time. Why do you not do that? Why do you not play tribal to tribal?
The first time she's like anybody but me, she decides to say, all right, but maybe also somebody else, and it burns her.
I know, exactly. She if she ever comes back, which I hope not, because she's a quitter. No, she quit. She's a quitter. That's another reason that it's a markdown. I definitely think that's a quit. But yeah, season 40 was not her most glorious moment. Obviously, a great player, wonderful social strategy, highly underrated social strategy. My first time running through Survivor and watching it, I didn't really pay attention to how good she is at getting people to like her and being manipulative. So yeah, I put her as the ultimate conservationalist because she is. Other than season 40, I didn't really like that outing from her, but other times she played pretty good. So that's where I put her.
Yeah, I feel like Game Changers to me isn't a markdown for her, believe it or not.
Not as much.
I think Winners at War is definitely, if you're going to look at her game, of course, go figure. That took 39 seasons for her to finally. I thought that her Game Changers game was surprisingly impressive given who she was going into it, her reputation, being the only two-time winner at that time. Like, that is just unfathomable. And you put that, I just feel like Survivor is not a game you get to play very often. It's not like a game of chess. Getting to play for a third time is a huge deal. Getting to play for a third time as an undefeated player is just insane. Even Tony didn't have that didn't have that, I would say, luxury, but he didn't have that going into his partially what made him so much more capable and left the field wide open for him at Winners at War was the fact that he tanked, and you brought that up, Adam. He tanked in Game Changers, whereas Sandra outplayed him and did a better job. And it's just so it's funny because on some level I feel like Sandra's individual games aren't the most impressive on Pearl Islands and Heroes versus Villains. I think if you break them down, it feels a little bit more results based when we put her so high.
Right.
The fact that she won is what makes her so high, not the fact that individually, episode to episode, she was, the pinnacle of Survivor strategy or anything. But at the same time, I think that I think she has a strategy that proves it can work. It has worked. I think the anybody but me strategy is just it's a strategy that will never not work in some sense. Is always looking out for yourself above anyone else in a game that's all about only one person can win. I would say I don't know for sure if I agree that she quit on Edge of Extinction, because I feel like that's a part of what the producers are okay with. It's not the same as like Austin choosing to leave or Janu or anything like that. The producers are like, you're allowed to quit, and I feel like when they give you the permission, it's a quit, but it's not the same. I feel like
you're allowed to what?
You're allowed to quit. You're allowed to walk out of the show.
Quit.
Yeah, but I think the stigma around quitting is not the same. I wouldn't include it necessarily the same as same with Wendy and Keith in the first season. Like, to me, when the producers allow you to walk out of the show and it's okay, it sort of changes it, as opposed to like you're playing a board game and you decide to just get up and leave the table. That's a very different. But if the game lets you walk away and you're allowed to go that route, it's not a good move. You're not going to win with it. But I don't consider it to be the same stigma as somebody who pulls themselves out and like basically flips the board over and says, I'm done. That's different.
And it's not the same. It's not Colton faking appendicitis to leave.
But I do agree. You can consider it a quit by definition of what the work.
It's a tad dishonorable, I guess, is what I would say.
I don't think Sandra cares.
No, she doesn't, and that's fine. I mean, golly, dude, you won $2 million. Take it. And she knew her capabilities. She knows she's
like, she was never getting back.
Yeah, oh no, I mean, and you could argue that some others in that cast could have done the same, because they're bad. But you had people like Amber, stay for Rob. Danny just did it because honorability. Maybe she thought she could win. I don't know, but Sandra definitely knew herself. She was definitely the worst challenge person out of that bunch, and she knows herself, but Tad, I don't know.
I mean, I think the edge of stuff in general, like giving the option for players to acceptably leave, is just dumb. Like, why
I don't like that either.
Why even like? I would rather it be there's no option for them to quit. If they quit, it's a quit, and they just chose to leave, as opposed to being like, oh no, it's okay, and it's like a part of what the producers are like, no, go for it, it's fine. I'm like, what? No, I thought they were supposed to be starving over there, and you guys are.
I mean, they never got that option on Redemption Island, didn't they?
As far as I know, they didn't too. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
That's another important thing to think about. Yeah, they never. I don't think like Ozzy ever had the. If they walked out, I think that was legitimately they were just walking.
Yeah,
the producers were like. So yeah,
that's why I was confused. I was confused in 38 because I was like, why are they giving them the option? Why didn't they do this any other season where you can still come back in after you're voted out?
Yeah. The whole two pathways when they get voted out. You can either leave the game for good or go to the losers bracket. It's like, I mean, they're already there. Of course they're going to go to the losers bracket.
And I think the point you guys made too about like looking at her chances, like I don't know if her chance of returning to the game would even be greater than like 1, like, because you're talking about some of the best challenge competitors we've ever seen. Like, obviously Boston Rob has won more individual challenges than anyone. Like I said, Parvati is an underrated challenge competitor. Tyson is one of maybe the top 5 ever. Surely top 10 in my opinion. So you're talking about some of the best. Natalie is a challenge beast.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
so I think yeah. So that's
that's an island for a challenge beast. That's
Wait, so Adam, your top 3. You said you had Sari, and who were the other 2 again? Tony
and Parvati.
So You're not gonna have Sandra then. Interesting.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
there we go. Okay.
You're such a hater.
Sandra's-
Hater.
So who were we just on? Was it Gideon saying Sandra?
Yeah.
Okay, so Peridiam, you still have your third.
Yeah, my third is I'm likening this player to Abraham Lincoln.
Okay.
They said just like Abraham Lincoln, he held the nation together during the Civil War. They were all about Lincoln was about the preservation of unity. Also against slavery. I'm sure this player's against that too. I'm pretty sure. I haven't asked them personally, but I imagine that's a thing in there on the resume to compare them. I have Parvati as my third to go on to the Mount Rushmore of Survivor. I said she held together, and if you look at it, Micronesia, she is the glue that holds the Black Widow Brigade together. She keeps the fans on the side. She keeps the favorites on the side. I actually did a little bit of research, and the editing doesn't give her enough credit. She's actually the one who masterminds Ozzy's blindside, not Suri. Suri actually goes with it and talks about it in some deleted behind the scenes where she says, I hope I don't get the blowback. It wasn't my idea. I hope Parvati gets it. And you don't know that because this show gives us the credit to Suri.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure why, I guess, because Parvati ends up winning. But either way, I'm like, all right, that's a point in her favor for being all about she's the glue that holds them together, just like Lincoln. He was the one he held the country together. She held together the villains between Russell and Danielle. She is the in-between between the two of them. Unfortunately, that caused friction, and it might have actually been the reason she lost the whole season was because of that. Maybe she wasn't unified enough or something. But yeah, Parvati is a shoo-in. She was an easy lock. The fans, when I asked them on Twitter, the fans were easily putting her above most of the players out there. So I felt like it was a no-brainer. When I compared, I said a year and a half ago at the beginning of Island of the Idols, I put her in my top 5 most iconic. And I was actually hesitant to put her on the Mount Rushmore at the time. But a year and a half later now, I feel pretty comfortable. I had her at third on my most most locked players that I would include in giving them a face statue. I think she's the first player I would give if they did an Island of the Idols 2 with new face statues. I think she's the first person I would say should get one.
Mm-hmm.
So,
who would you put as your other person?
Other than Parvati, I would probably put the fourth person on my list who I haven't gotten to yet.
Okay.
Oh.
All right, we'll save that then. Is that all your Parvati defense? I didn't want to cut you off.
Yeah, just I think she was all about the preservation of unity, and I think that fits for Lincoln. I think that she's such an iconic player. She's played 4 times. She was the first player I truly was standing over, just hardcore. Could not get it. Heroes versus Villains was the first season I really became a diehard super fan of the show. In this we're talking when it was airing, so this was 11 years ago. I'm part of my channel the logo was inspired off of Parvati and how much I enjoyed watching her play on Heroes versus Villains. And I just she's resonated with me for a while. Unfortunately, Winners at War was she got swap screwed. I don't think there was a ton it was a lot of pre-gaming on that swap tribe with the Nick, Wendell, Michelle alliance, and Yule even. The 4 of them were all pre-gaming. And so she was the only one of that 5 who had not pre-gamed with them outside of having the connection with Yule from Cook Islands. And that's unfortunate, and that really sucks to think about. But that's a lot of Winners at War is what could have been. So
I believe Jeff. I remember Jeff being asked who he would consider the greatest ever. And, he said Parvati. I think that might have been around the late 20s time when he answered that. So he might obviously have a different answer now because we've had some more seasons. But obviously Jeff felt strongly as being someone who gets to see all the ins and outs of the show and stuff we don't see. He obviously still heralded Parvati as
do you know Jeff did a Mount Rushmore before Winners at War? Did you see him do that? He was interviewed by Dean. He went on a Google interview. Dean works for Google from Island of the Idols, and they sat down and he asked Probst, who would you put on your Mount Rushmore? And Probst had 3 stock picks, and Parvati was one of them. Let me figure it out. He had 1 pick that was so out of left field that I was absolutely flabbergasted. So he had Rob, Sandra, Parvati, which is actually the 3 I have in the same order. And then his 4th pick, which I guess we can transition to our last picks. But Jeff Probst's final pick for Mount Rushmore of Survivor was Ben.
Oh, yes. I
Ben
do remember this
Drewerman,
now. Yeah,
which
I do remember this. Yeah.
I don't know about that. That's a little.
I get that he was maybe trying to pick like one player that had won recently. I don't know if I would have gone with Ben for that pick, or even considered him maybe, but definitely a left field pick.
I feel like, and this was right before Winners at War had aired, so we didn't know how well Ben had done. Maybe if he won this season, I could understand it. But Ben didn't exactly have the most glorious, honorable exit at the end. I mean, honorable in the sense that he threw his game down for Sarah,
Right.
and Tony. But I'm like, is that the player you're putting as your top 4 faces of the show? I'd probably pick, if anything, I'd pick Sarah over Ben based on the fact that she got him to throw his game away for her, and she was a flame away from probably being a 2-time winner. So
Yeah.
I agree.
I don't know. I just thought that crazy. Jeff Probst is he's wilding out there with these answers.
Yeah.
I put Ben Wade.
Ben Wade, yeah, people like Ben Wade.
I thought when you said Ben, I was like Benjamin Wade, surely not
What's his
Ben.
name?
Yeah, golly.
They picked the wrong Ben, but
Yeah, facts.
so speaking of out of left field picks, I guess this pick, who I'm going to say for my 4th, might be the one of any of our 4 that would probably be the most eyebrow raising, even though I think everyone can at least agree that this person was an outstanding player. And as the show was going on, while you guys were talking, besides listening to your picks, I was constantly debating in my head whether or not to pick this guy, because this was the toughest one to pick for me. This would be the male player who I feel like is just the best all-around player. And again, I tried to specifically lean into first-time players, not exclusively. So for best male player overall, it probably would have been Tony, but Tony was my pick for greatest. So I guess you consider this to be who I'd pick as the second best male player of all time. Of course, I thought of players like Hatch, who invented a lot of the strategies that 20 years later and probably 20 years from now, assuming the show is still running, knock on wood, we're probably still going to be using. Coming in with no blueprint is an amazing thing, or without a blueprint. I briefly considered Boston Rob for this, but when I looked at someone like Sari, luck was against her, and I think prevented possibly 2 to maybe even 3 wins for her. With Rob, every time he lost, I feel like it was because of his own undoing. Picking a fight with the wrong guy and heroes versus villains, and being way too aggressive in Winners at War, and maybe I guess Marquesa might be the one you could argue luck wasn't on his side, but I didn't want to pick him for this one. There's a lot of other people I considered. JT was one of them, but Cochran as well. Didn't have the strongest first game, but if I had to pick one for the greatest all-around male player, had to throw out Chris's name as well from Vanuatu as someone
Chris
I can.
Underwood, there you go.
But if I had to pick one, again, I would pick Tony for this, but I already put him on my list. I would actually put
two Tonys.
Yeah, I would actually put Cagayan Tony and Winners at War Tony. No, I would pick Todd Herzog for this pick. I believe I told you guys, or I know at least told Gideon beforehand. So it seemed like you were a bit more surprised the first time I told you. You got all
Gideon
of that.
doesn't seem impressed.
Yeah. I picked Todd because he came into a season, I think, of a lot of heavy hitters. Even if some of these heavy hitters weren't strategically sound, I think there was a lot of people on China who, by the merge point, you could completely make a sound argument, had a good chance of winning the game. I think James had a good chance of winning the game. I think Courtney, Amanda, maybe even Jean Robert. Frosty made the merge, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
In China? Yeah, so I think Frosty has a case. I think there was a lot, even PG. I don't know if any season of all newbies had more people enter the merge with like a good chance of winning. And Todd, who wasn't a great, challenge beast, didn't really have the idols or I know he gave his idol to James that he had found. I feel like of all those people that had a great chance coming into the merge, I feel like Todd was on the lower end as far as had a chance to win and just really amped it up. I don't want to call it a comeback win because I don't know if he was ever, down and out. But I just feel like his win on China established him as probably, in my opinion, the greatest first time winner. Obviously, the big thing holding him back is that he never did return back to play, which obviously wasn't because we don't have to get too much into Todd's off Survivor life out of respect for him. But I feel like if all that stuff hadn't happened, he would have been a lock to return and play again. So I don't want to take things that happen off of Survivor to hold him against his legacy on the show. So
Yeah,
it was a tough
look. I got a Funko Pop of Todd right behind my head. He's sitting over there, made by Todd himself. So I love Todd. I'm a big fan of Todd. He's probably my second favorite winner. Not necessarily like the greatest, but just in terms of how much I'm endeared to him, and I resonate with his win and like the crazy over the top strategist who puts himself at risk, sometimes to his own detriment, and he makes crazy like out of the box plays with giving James the idol and the kidnapping. He utilized the twist of the season to his advantage. Right. He thought of stuff that this idol that existed for one season. I don't even know if he watched Fiji. I don't even know if it had finished airing at the time, and he was working with a new idol, and it was hidden in a very unique spot, unprecedented, really to this day in terms of where it was and what it looked like. And like I love Todd. I think it's an interesting pick. Personally, I like the pick, but I never thought of Todd in my top four. So
he's great. It's just peculiar.
Yeah, well, it also, like, I consider the final tribal council to be a huge part of deciding how good of a winner someone is. I personally place, like, if I'm judging how great was that person's win, I consider their final tribal council performance as one of the single most important things. That's just a personal opinion. And I think Todd I know Chris might be up there. Doherty might be up there for me, but I think
Chris was the best.
But it was close for those two. I probably would give Todd the edge, and it was kind of the first time where someone took the route of owning up to their game as opposed to the apology tour that we had seen throughout so many tribal councils, and now the game kind of has shifted more to this game of what's my resume, what have I done. It wasn't sorry I eliminated you. It was with Todd. It was I'm glad I eliminated you because if I hadn't, I wouldn't be here. I feel like he kind of changed the shape of what tribal councils look like and ultimately what it takes to pick a winner. I feel like a lot of times before Todd, it was a popularity contest. Who was the most likable? I mean, I think clearly Colby played a better game in Australia personally, but if it was going on popularity, of course it would be Tina to win that season. All-Stars, clearly Rob played the better Survivor game, but they gave it to Amber. I feel like Todd was the one who kind of changed Survivor as opposed to who wins the game or what it takes to win the game. So Todd's my pick.
All right.
All right. Cool. Yeah. I mean, interesting, but
I mean, I'm glad we don't all. I was afraid we were going to come in here and all have the exact same 4 picks. So the fact that none of us do have the same 4 is good. I feel like.
Yeah.
All right.
And right now, so far, I don't think any of us have the same pick. Yeah.
Well, no, I have Rob, Sandra, Parvati.
We both had Tony, but that was the only similarity, I think.
So
Between
wait,
me and
so
Gideon.
Gideon, wait, you have who so far? Who are your three?
I have Tony, and then I have Rob
and Sandra.
Sandra.
So okay, so you don't have Parvati
So-
yet. All right.
No, and I feel terrible because me and Adam did this a few months ago, and I did have Parv instead of Sandra, but I switched.
Last second, you regret it.
No,
You put a quitter on the Mount Rushmore, man.
oh, trust me, I don't want to, but
Aren't you?
can't deny
You're a
the
fan of
two men.
Parvati, right? You're a fan
I'm
of
a big Parvati fan. I love Parvati,
All right.
and she's a great player. And in my opinion, she should be a 2-time winner. But she's not.
Who's your 4, Gideon?
I couldn't deny a 2-time winner a spot
Mhm.
Right.
like you did, Adam. Anyways, all right. So when I think Abraham Lincoln, this is my Abraham Lincoln. When you think of America, you really think of it pre-slavery and post-slavery. All right. So when I was thinking, I was like, well, who was the difference maker in old school Survivor and new school Survivor? Who made the big differences? Who was the person that spearheaded new school Survivor and the new era coming into play? That man has to be Russell Hanse. I went Russell Hanse. He completely changed the game, completely turned Survivor on its head with the way in which he played with such ferocity and finding idols, and quite a good physical player as well. All around great, other than his jury management. I feel like if he went back on, he would definitely know that he needs to work on that and how he treats people. But you know, he thought he won the first one, and he went on Heroes vs. Villains, played the same exact way, went to the end again, got absolutely screwed on Redemption Island. I can't really fault him for that because he was screwed from the beginning as soon as he was casted. In my opinion, probably. You can argue him and Suri as the greatest people to never win the game. In my opinion, should at least have won once. So yeah, I went Russell Hanse because he made Survivor what it is today. Really made the new school way, and really, when you think of Survivor, you think pre-Russell Hanse, post-Russell Hanse, so old school and new school, and he was the person that switched that up. So I went Russell.
All right.
Yep.
Do you like that pick, Adam?
I mean, I didn't really consider him for any of the fields that I did. I mean, maybe considered him for a second as my the pick that ended up going for Todd. So I don't like the pick for my Mount Rushmore, but for the criteria that Gideon has, I think it's a perfect pick for the player who kind of was the one who, you can kind of look at the split of what is old school and new school. I feel like if you had to pick a season range, it would be 1920. If you had to pick a season specifically, it would probably be 19. If you had to pick a player specifically, it would probably be Hanse. So I like the pick for Gideon's criteria for sure.
I feel like if I didn't have Russell as my fourth, but if I did, I feel like he might fit the Roosevelt better if I was to try and make it historical. Because Teddy was nicknamed the Trust Buster. I feel like that could be a good one for Russell. He was all about working hard. He was all about looking out for the working man. I feel like Russell busted his butt, especially in Samoa. And he was all about the development. That's why he was put on Mount Rushmore. And I feel like Russell's very much, he developed a lot of what we've seen going forward. He was one of the players who showed up and had a significant impact on future seasons. And that's something most people can't speak of when they played Survivor. So, yeah, I could see that. Interestingly, I put Rob as my Roosevelt, which is funny because they basically were on the same season. And it's like, if Russell picks the orange buff and he goes on Ometepe, do we think that he has a chance to win? I know you said no chance, but I almost wonder if Russell was able to cultivate that tribe into what Rob did. I don't know.
I don't know.
Does Zapatera, they disliked Russell so much that they threw that challenge to get him out so early, which was a stupid move, horrible move.
Yeah,
I don't think anyone's arguing that. But I wonder, do they do that? Do they do that for Rob?
Well, here's the thing. Rob, especially then coming off of such 2 seasons where he was so villainous, Rob was, played Heroes versus Villains like a hero pretty much. So I feel like I feel like Zapatara. Am I pronouncing it right?
Zapatera.
Yeah, it's whatever. Anyway, I feel like they would have accepted Rob more, especially the alpha males that decided to get out. Russell, and he was just duped from the get go. Would Philip in that group accept Russell? I don't feel like they would have thrown a challenge to get him out. But
I feel like Russell. I feel like what would happen is that Rob's tribe would probably not throw the challenge if he was on purple, and they would probably steamroll and have the numbers at the merge. I don't know if Rob wins. I feel like Russell would make the merge too, though. I think that you would see like Christina, Francesca, probably Philip going out pre-merge, and Russell fitting in with the younger kids on that tribe. I don't know. Anyway, it's interesting to consider.
Yeah. I would have loved to see that.
I think that would have made the season a lot better.
Yeah, it would have.
Came down to just.
And that's one of my favorite seasons. But I think that would have made the season better.
Oh, I think 100%.
Yeah.
Switch tribes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Russell. Yeah, I didn't have Russell in my top 4. Maybe as like a runner-up to for the Roosevelt spot, but. So my number 4, and this is tricky because I'm still up in the air about it. Like even right now, I don't have it locked down. I've had 2 different lists, and 3 of them have overlapped between Rob, Sandra, and Parvati. The 4th one has not. I've had 2 different people that I'm looking at here, and I'm not sure if I should go the route of the fan favorites, which I agree with, or do I go the route of historically speaking? And I think if you know what president's left, it's pretty obvious who I'm going to pick, and that being George Washington, which would be Richard Hatch. It's hard to deny the first president is the biggest face of the franchise, by far the most iconic, I think. If anyone knows anything about Survivor, Richard Hatch is the first person. Newer fans, not so much. If you're just starting out on Netflix, you're probably not going to know much about him. You probably weren't even alive when he won. I feel like Richard Hatch embodies the point of what Washington stood for, which was he revolutionized the show. He was the first to do it. Maybe you could argue anyone else would have done it instead of him. But nonetheless, he was the guy who did it. He laid the foundation for the rest of the show to evolve. It can't evolve if hypothetically Kelly wins and then the game becomes more like Australian Survivor, where it's all about friendship or mateship and big challenges and physicality. Richard didn't have anything to do with that. He just said, look, it's all about outsmarting and outwitting everyone. He throws a challenge at the final 3 in the first season. Unprecedented. And honestly, it's like something that never gets done again. Like you never see people, you see Vesapia throws, but like other than that, it's incredibly rare to see people pull off such high level, high IQ, big brain strategies that all come down to just being aware of the situation you find yourself in. He was totally aware of the dynamics of the final 3 and what needed to happen, and he pulled it off brilliantly. It was fantastic. So that was my first pick. And ultimately, the rule I decided was, if I was to make a video doing this, who would I put? That's my final canonical answer. So I did ultimately decide to put Richard Hatch as my 4th pick. And going into this video, I wasn't thinking I was going to do that. But now that we're talking about the historical precedent so much, and I like the fact that Gideon went that route too, I thought I would be the only guy who was that ridiculous to go with it. But I put Richard Hatch. The other player I consider was Tony. Just because he's a 2-time winner, and it's hard to deny that Tony's a fantastic player. He's the greatest or the best. People think of Tony. I see everyone on Reddit, on Twitter, everyone's like, Tony. My thing is, like, historically, Tony doesn't fit on Mount Rushmore. I think it would be like putting the greatest hotness of winners or presidents in the U.S. history on the Mount Rushmore today. I feel like you kind of got to go a little bit earlier. I feel like it's a little bit difficult not to put Hatch based on what the criteria was for Rushmore. I don't know. So yeah, I went with Hatch. I put Hatch on.
Like I said, I'm surprised nobody put Hatch as Washington, so I'm okay with that. But not putting Tony. If you're the way you're going, I understand, because he's not an older player.
I mean, it's like we could set the precedent. Let's say Survivor goes on for 100 more seasons. We're only at season 40. Why not put Tony on? I get it. I think that there's definitely room for Tony. I don't know. I don't know who I'd take off, though. Like, I guess Hatch could replace him and Tony goes on. I wouldn't argue. Like, if anyone wants to put Tony on Mount Rushmore, yeah, go for it. I think there's legitimately... I almost am, like, questioning myself now. I'm 50-50 on it, so...
Did you... Because I noticed, I think... So Gideon did a 3-man, 1-woman. I did half and half. I did my half and half intentionally. I was wondering, did you do that intentionally, Billy, or did you
No, I
not
didn't.
consider that? Okay.
Well, now
I didn't really. It did sort of pan out that way, but it was
Mhm.
more just I would rather be true to like the roots of Mount Rushmore, I guess, the general idea of it. So for me, it wasn't so much like I'm gonna pick based on gender, but I mean, I figured when I did my top 5 most iconic, I had Hatch, Sandra, Rob, Parvati, and I put Rupert just based on the fact that he was such a figurehead. They literally gave him a episode to reward him $1 million.
oh yeah,
Like it's
Right.
hard to deny at the time when Survivor was at its peak popularity. It'll never get that high again. At least I don't think it will. And to get the fact that they had Rupert, so I was like, okay, Rupert's up there. So that was like 3 men, 2 women. But I was like, okay, for this, we're creating a face statue. I don't think Rupert gets that. Cut him out. It just happened to be a 2-2 split.
well now you're making me look misogynistic, madam.
Damn.
No, we know you're not. We know you're not. I've been trying to. Sorry, as you were talking, I was trying to put everyone's face on a graph so we could kind of all see it at the same time. On one of those tier maker graphs. Let me try to share my screen real quick and see if I can get this to work. But we definitely have an interesting 4. I'm glad that we had some similarities and some differences at the same time. I feel like everyone kind of had like that one sort of interesting pick. Myself maybe being with Todd and Russell with Gideon and Hatch with Peridiam, but I feel like we've all kind of done a good job like defending those picks or why that makes sense for our list in particular.
Wow,
is
so
this-
none of us had the same person on every list.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah, I figured our lists would be a little different because I feel like we're 3 people who like try to, put a lot of thought into our lists. But I was pretty sure we'd have at least one. I figured between like Parvati and Tony, one of those, or even
Also,
Sandra.
when
No, obviously.
When I had said earlier that I would like to have, like, I think Parvati's front in line to get at the next face statue. I think the next one would be Tony. So I actually don't think that Hatch is the guy who's gonna get it. I don't think he's ever coming back. But yeah, that's how up in the air I was. I said that comment thinking my next one will probably be the 4th person who should get that Island of the Idols 2 face statue. But yeah, I think I don't think Hatch is coming back, but I'd still probably put him on the Mount Rushmore just for the fact that George Washington is there and
Oh yeah, it's the founding father.
gotta go with it.
Yeah.
I've watched his YouTube videos. His videos are a little out there.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
So, I'm not exactly like rearing to see him come back or anything, but yeah, for what he means for the history of the show, I get it.
Absolutely. Well, cool. Did you? I guess that's the end of our lists. Before we leave, Billy, did you have any upcoming videos you wanted to share with us? What are you working on?
Hopefully I've always got an answer for that question. I've always got an upcoming video. Right now I'm working on my next one coming out this Thursday, every Thursday at the moment. It's going to be talking about the unexpected, my most unexpected blindsides from the edit, as far as things I did not see coming that I thought were for sure locks. A little different than the usual, like, just didn't see that. This isn't like the Michaela getting blindsided in Millennials Gen X. It's like, I could understand that possibly being a thing. We're talking like moments that I was so locked in that this was going to happen and it just didn't. And I was like, where did that come from? But yeah, I've got a couple of that, looking at some other things. I know the video after that talking about editing scenes in Survivor where the editors flip the script. And it's a very vague subject, but I'm excited to talk about that. So, but yeah, that's what's going on for me.
Very cool. I'm going to be excited to see both for sure. So yeah, check out Peridiam's channel. I'm assuming every Survivor fan on YouTube already has at some point if they're not already subscribed, but definitely check it out if you're watching this.
Hopefully not, because then I can't grow. Hopefully not. I'm trying to get to that 100K on YouTube. It's not.
You'll
easy.
get there. You'll get there, man.
I'm at like After Winners at War, it was at like 90, and then it slowed down. Maybe it was like 85. It slowed down tremendously. I was supposed to get it based on Social Blade by February, and I'm like, that's definitely not happened. So I'm like, all right, we're gonna get it at some point.
You'll get that silver play button, man. You'll get
I
it.
want it. I know.
For sure. So me and Gideon will be doing a podcast with Eager Turtle coming up soon. We don't have a time set for it, but we'll make an announcement on our social media platforms. So check out the description, the links to Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram where you can get those. But what we will be discussing is we're going to examine all of the contestants from Winners at War one by one and kind of discuss and debate the futures of those players, whether they're retired or would maybe come back fairly soon or maybe way down the line. We'll discuss them all one by one. So hopefully that'll be a fun way to kind of remember Winners at War and all those players and the legacies they've had in their games. More great videos coming up soon, hopefully. So go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this. Thanks so much, everyone, for watching.
Thank you for having me, Adam. I appreciate it. Appreciate the invite.
Of course, man. Thank you for coming.
Yeah,
thanks for joining.
Awesome.
Pleasure.
All right. Everyone have a good day.
He just left. He didn't even leave. He didn't even.
Oh, he's
end the
gone.
live.
All right, sweet.
He didn't end the live.
We're still live.
Yeah, he didn't even end the live.